trying this as well. Starting a business comes with inherent challenges and pitfalls. However, even when you're off to a good start, keeping a company running successfully isn't for the faint of heart. Many small businesses encounter issues that prove to be insurmountable, leading to business closure and dashed dreams. So, how can we help these business owners and CEOs? This is your host, Swami Sri Perambador, and you're listening to Leadership in Crisis podcast. And we have invited a very, very special guest, my close friend and a leader of the Lions, Sean Robertson. Sean Robertson's North Star is set to business and organizations up for success with the skill sets he has. He is passionate about showing how to establish your goals for both your company and personal life. With that, he does the work to deliver on your goals while teaching you to do it on your own. Sean is known as the greatest of all time for a previous business consulting firm where he delivered the smallest to the largest companies and in some areas invented new approaches for consulting businesses. Sean is the top expert in developing leadership in profit and non-profit organizations, as well as being renowned expert in financial acumen and building profit for companies. Uniquely, Sean also has a deep background in imparting knowledge at a tier 1 university, a military Top Gun school, and a 1:1 change mentoring and coaching. He has done numerous leadership trainings. Here are just a few. He trained more than 3,000 leaders and more than 75 CEOs, business owners, and presidents with 18,000 hours of project management time. If I continue to say more, there are many to cover just in this podcast. So I let Sean talk about more about this. So welcome, Sean, to this wonderful Leadership in Crisis.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
So before we begin, I just would love to hear, what is your, in a nutshell, the journey, what you are doing, why you are doing, and what are you doing right now? What is close to your heart?
Oh my goodness. Thank you for asking. So I have a company, Fidelis Leadership and Business. And the sole goal is really delivering the full end-to-end proven leadership system. And I find that principal leaders are usually really good at their product or service. There's two things that they haven't had the opportunity to receive. One is full executive leadership development. And I'm not just talking theory, I'm talking about the tools, the processes, the muscle memory. And then the second piece is full executive business financial acumen. My company brings both. I'm really making a concerted effort, though, to deliver the leadership system itself. And it feeds me. I have a ton of fun. It's so much fun to go in, walk them through a really interactive teaching. Because if I talk at you, it's just not going to stick. If you get involved, it sticks. So they learn that. And then we follow through for the adoption and muscle memory and the delivery of it. And that's when we're off to the races. When you have a transformed leader who knows what I call demanding but emotionally intelligent leadership, it transforms the game. You get the rest of the team on it, and that's when your return on investment goes up. And frankly, you end up really achieving those goals that you want. Live for it, love it, and thank you for having me to talk about it.
Excellent, excellent. Wow, it's a great introduction. You touched on very, very key points. But as you know, innovation is at the cusp of it. It is every day. Previously, it used to be like every year we used to have a new product, but it became a few months. Now it is like a few days or a few hours. Like, it was a chat GPT other day, and already now chat GPT is going away, and now new thing is coming as automate GPT. So innovation is really going, but to run a company, to build an organization, leadership is very, very critical. So in your experience, when you're working with these business owners, what are some of the blind spots of the CEOs are not able to do? Because they're passionate about what they do, but to run the organization, they need to develop those skills. So can you share some of those experiences and what are you identifying as the blind spots and how they need to really at least identify that they acknowledge that they have those spots before even they go, right? Most of the time, they may not even know. So I would love to hear about your experiences on those.
I like to say that blind spots are the number one risk to a leader and to an organization. When we think about that and relating it to your question of innovation and change, what we're also talking about is the next killer of a company is they grow too fast. To be able to lead change is in and of itself probably an hour-long conversation. But
I'm sure it is.
Let's go back to the primary piece of a blind spot. By definition, it's a unknown unknown, meaning if I know what it is, it's no longer a blind spot. And how do you find that? I'm going to thread everything I talk about back to emotional intelligence. I refuse to train a leader if they aren't willing to engage in emotional intelligence. And by science and data, it can grow as long as you're willing to lean into it and you have a drive. The first question is why? Why would I, as a leader, want to go down a road of growing my emotional intelligence? The output is key. So there's a couple key rough data points from over the years. When I first discovered this in graduate studies, really over 2 years, let's just use a hard term, tyrant, it can have the same production output as someone who leads who is demanding, but with emotional intelligence. The reality is after that 2 years, the tyrant approach is going to begin to start to lose upwards to 60% on a turnover over time, and or reduction in their staff really having high product output. They'll start to work less. You're yelling at me, I'm going to slow down. Versus the demanding but emotional intelligent leader is going to retain a much higher amount, roughly 80% or more. When we take that type of information that's a bit legacy, and then we start to think about modern studies, really show us that people are shopping around for a company to work at just as much they're looking at culture as they are a paycheck. Why? The data is starting to show somewhere between 10 to 20% more output in a culture that has high culture to it, positive, reinforcing, unleashing high communication and clarity throughout the organization, less of a hold the information close to my chest, go hide in a corner office, and then you yell at people. So it goes back to what I call a demanding and emotionally intelligent leader. At the definition, and you'll find all sorts of books and everything else. My look at this from a study perspective is I can define that by 3 elements of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-control, and empathy. So if we think about those 3 things, and I'm leaning into self-awareness, I'm starting to create some self-control in the way I react. And there's tools and approaches on how to do that. If I'm doing those things, I'm also seeking feedback. If I'm seeking feedback, I can now find my blind spots. Going back to how do I lean into finding my blind spots so I can get there quicker? A phrase I like to use is fail fast, win faster. The only way to do that is to have enough self-awareness and self-control to receive it, and empathy to reach out to people. Does empathy mean I'm over emotional and trying to just connect all the time and relate and express? No, those might be elements. Really, it's just about calming my reaction and my thoughts on what I'm going to say next, and really trying to hear you and assess what is the information. So by going that route, we're leaning into blind spots, and now we're starting to solve things faster, which enables us to get into how we lead change and innovate. And we can turn the corner and start to talk about that. But I'll pause because I know that you probably have some really good thoughts on that.
No, I think it is fantastic. And you have really touched on those 3 points: self-awareness, self-control, and empathy. This is very, very important. And as we all know, there are so many books are there, but again, the practical approach to it it's like a workbook is needed. I'm sure you are probably doing a lot of those workshops. But my next question leading to is to show this empathy, and you're already being innovative, and you're already doing a large scale growth. How are those team dynamics will work? Why should any team should follow you? Is that empathetic leadership is helping them to build strong teams? Because when you are growing, if you don't have a bigger teams who follows the same vision, walk the talk the walk, otherwise it's going to fail, because scalability is a big issue. So what have you seen from the team dynamics and touching on this empathy or any other leadership activities which will help a CEO or a business owner to build strong teams?
Sure, there's a lot there to unpack, but I'm going to kind of isolate it to a few things. What's the purpose of scaling? I've gone into a company that made $1 in profit, but tripled in their revenue. And when I was done transforming the leaders first, and then going end to end in business financial acumen, it was 10 to 20 fold in their ROI without getting into the actual numbers. They were stunned at what they could do. Why? Why does it work? When I am operating with a demanding but emotionally intelligent approach, it's both. I'm not less demanding. I'm still demanding, but I can hear and see and quantify team saturation. I can find where's the choke points faster. We can organize the teams, the people, the software, the processes faster. And because we're able to connect and collaborate, now we can get solutions and enact. And we can have real conversations on, I find that overly demanding with less emotional intelligence starts to equal, for lack of a better analogy, it's like the size of a Thanksgiving meal plate. Pick your holiday.
Okay.
The plate is full, right? There's nothing else that's going to fit in your stomach. And this is the one time a year you're going to overeat on purpose. Doing it wrongly from an over demanding perspective means I walk by, I take a T-bone steak the size of my head, and I put it on top of that. And I go, eat that too, and I want it done by 5 o'clock. Now we slow down. Now our output slows down, right? Mm-hmm. And in a scalability of a company, it's exactly what happens. We have to lean into the aspects of building the people just as much as we build everything else. When we think of growth and how to maintain that, it's kind of like a four-legged stool. We've got the infrastructure side, we have the sales and marketing side, which is going to produce that revenue. We have processes and systems. Those kind of go hand in hand. And then we have the people side. The hardest leg to build of the four-legged stool is that people side. So by really leaning into those pieces, now I'm cementing and putting a pillar in place where we can not just boom, but now I'm not making $1 in profit. I'm making 100 times more than that, because my people are able to be empowered and recognize and solve and collaborate. It's not to say that, let's be real. It's not to say that you can't be a semi-tyrant, hard person, lack of emotional intelligence and be successful. They certainly can. They're also going to be a meat eater, a soul-sucking company that's going to grind it out, and they might make some money and they'll fire and hire like it's pancakes.
Yeah.
And those work, and those are the goals of that company and those principal leaders. It all goes back to what I call North Star goals. And so if my goal is to not have that and to have a culture where it's highly collaborating while I'm still reaching my financial goals, there's other things that start to happen. My stress level goes down. I don't have to turn into a yeller and everything else. I have tools and a process. My hours that I work are probably going to go down, and I can start to have more of a work-life balance. I lead by example in those areas, then people subordinate to me are able to follow that. And we'll come back to how we do that. There's a lot of clarity is what I call it when we get into accountability. But I hope that answers your question. To really drive and grow and scale and innovate is going to come back to how the leader, yes, there's all the organizational pieces, and I specialize in what's the leadership layers, who's going to take those processes. Let's deep dive into the skill matrix. What's their roles? What's their saturation? How is the information going to move? What's the software? What's the processes? Those all need to be done, but they're half as effective if you approach it from a leadership element of how to be demanding and emotionally intelligent.
Excellent. No, I think you touched on a lot of the key points, and every point is important. But most important, as you mentioned, people. People are the most important element in any organization, also a difficult element to work with them if you don't have a right approach. And a lot of the time, as you mentioned, there will be soul suckers, people are just fire and hire. They don't have any empathy. And it's kind of create a toxic culture. So I would love to stress on and want to hear about, how do you identify the culture when you are mentoring any of the business owners and CEOs of the companies, and how do you start helping them to change the culture? And what is the ideal culture from your perspective? How do they recognize? How do they change? And what is the best in class culture?
Oh man, let's just do a side by side for fun. I think maybe not in totality, but there's going to be elements in a typical as is current day. And then we'll talk about a desired state. Okay. The as is going to have elements or full of the following: micromanagement. I'll do it myself. Disempowering. Siloed, which means I'm in these little fractured, distant work efforts. Pendulum swings. I might swing from kind of a little bit too tyrant to maybe way too nice, kind of more like a Smurf. I become very reactive. Accountability goes down, or there is no accountability. No clarity of roles and tasks. Either overly flat, or sometimes it's kind of fake in the hierarchical, meaning it's not really empowered, and a principal leader might be operating 4 layers deep, even though people exist in those roles. The desired state is high collaboration, because now we're solving, moving information, and we're innovating fast. Demanding but respectful, forward-thinking and proactive, empowering junior leaders, a structure, I think, of mixed functional, hierarchical with open coordination and some matrixed, which really gives you a ton of teamwork. Clarity and accountability is at the heart of all this, and then measured. Why? Why do we want that culture? Production is the highest. We are going to attract and keep top talent. We're going to outpace competitors, staying ahead of market changes due to ease of enacting and adopting change. And it's going to equal more profit in meeting those North Star goals that we have. So when we think about culture, that's kind of how I start to look at what is the culture. And when I go in to assess it, certainly you can have easy, quick question surveys. There's a variety of things that you would put in that, and you'd want it to come as a response from as many people in the organization as possible. When you get to really large, corporation and enterprise level, you might have a company like a Gallup that's going to go in and ask like 20 different questions to give you a really good measurement. You get to medium and small business, it's not hard to have a basic questionnaire. You certainly want an external person with no bias. If it's internal, they better be extremely respected and be non-biased and not be afraid of losing their job. And really, your goal is to have an objective view externally of it. So what I do also is I'll go in, depending on the size of the company, I'll do dozens of one-to-one interviews. Now, when I get into an hour-long conversation with a line staff, line manager, mid-level, senior executive, and the principal plus the owners, I get what's called a full 360-degree view of straight, hard feedback. First 20 minutes, there's not a lot of vulnerability in the conversations. After we break down those walls, we're having real conversations. Then we get into the meat of what's our culture like? What happens? Who's leading what? Do I feel empowered? Is there an underbelly that we really don't talk about? Is it growing fast and there's lack of a thumb on the pulse by the senior executives to really know what their base culture is? And in the academic studies, there's a great prominent known author when you get into your graduate studies by the name of Shine. And way he describes looking at culture to understand it is you have kind of these three levels. You have artifacts level, you have espoused beliefs, and then the values. And you can look at the culture from that perspective. That is then going to really showcase where we're at from a culture perspective. Okay, so now we understand the culture. We're getting a view of where does it fit on the side-by-side that I started with, right? Now, what do we do to impact it? The dominant impact, you could roughly state that 60%, just to give kind of a view of the impact of the most senior leaders in a company. What that leader pays attention to and how they act and how they lead is going to be superimposed onto the company. Another way to view that is there's a theory out there called the shadow we cast, where at the very highest level, the tiniest little things I do are blown up and viewed by everyone, and then it has a compounding effect down the company. And it will enable whatever those tendencies are within a company on how I act as a leader and how I communicate as a leader. So if I'm going to change a culture, I got to change the principal leaders. And then I work on every leader below the principal leader because of the subcultures that start to happen in a company, depending on the size, are dependent upon that person. More often than not, in today's time, when a person leaves a company, they're leaving it because of the boss, not necessarily the company, which really means we're talking about the subcultures, right?
Yep.
So if all of those things are true, which they are by data studies, it goes all the way back to emotional intelligence. For that leader to be able to exercise that demanding but emotionally intelligent approach will then be superimposed onto the culture, which will drive the change. And the end result that we're really going for is high collaboration, demanding but respectful, forward-thinking and proactive, empowering junior leaders, the right type of structure that really enables the teamwork, clarity and accountability and measured. Why? Production's the highest, attract and keep top talent, outpace competitors, staying ahead of market changes, equals more profit and meeting those North Star goals.
Excellent, excellent. Wow. This is very powerful. You have given a complete secret sauce on how to build the culture, going through all those interviews and changing the principal leader. That's very, very important. And as you rightly said, people don't leave. It's a bad company. It's a bad manager or a bad boss because they are a badass, right? So sometimes it is all about the problem. So one of the key elements I've been hearing you touched upon, accountability, right? So if I'm a CEO of my company, to showcase I am the 1% changing to change the organization in the right direction, what is my accountability? How do I really showcase that I am following that accountability from myself? So what is the secret sauce, or what are the steps as a leader I should be showing that I am accountable, or I'm following the accountability framework, or whatever you define, to show my team and my employees or the shareholders that, if the boss is showing the accountability, then they also are more, enthralled to do that. So can you just touch on the accountability itself, and then how can we impart that knowledge to the leader?
Absolutely. In my Fidelis leadership and business system model, we just talked about the need to go through the 360 up front, right? We don't just stop there. Accountability is clarity. And if I take that back to emotional intelligence, I need self-awareness, self-control, and empathy. The self-awareness means I need inputs. So a 360 should be done annually for the principal leader. Send the questionnaires to, if there's a board with that president, send it to the board. Send it to below and well below, and get raw feedback. And that can be really hard, because when you give an opportunity for anonymous feedback, people are really going to tell you how they feel. It might come with some extra descriptive words. The trick is to put aside the defensiveness, self-control, and look for the golden nuggets of information. What's the trend? What am I doing and not doing? Mm-hmm. And that feedback capability is huge. It's obviously going to be driven by the principal leader. It's not like everyone else or under them can go, hey, we want you to do a 360 feedback so you can grow and change because you suck. If there's a board, the board can start to drive that. The real question is, as they go through it, if I just end the conversation there, the principal leader is going to be like, well, why? I'm good at what I'm doing. I'm the president and I'm going to stay there. Well, you know, there's a huge history in the fallacy of that approach on how our ego gets in the way. And then we start to create self-induced blind spots, which are what? The number one risk to a leader and a company, right? So if you're really thinking about the output, the North Star, the goals, my personal ones and my company ones, if I'm really thinking about the net profit, these market goals, family goals, succession, legacy, if I'm really thinking about that, I should probably lean into feedback and 360 degree. That comes within measurement. We're all familiar with the standard measurements when you get into, you know, what's my job costing trends? What's my net, my gross? What's the cost of materials? How's the labor? Well, let's get into measuring leaders. There's ways to measure leaders. There's prominent things out there. Bain and Company, like 25 years ago, came up with employee net promoter score. It's one question. Yeah. It's the same question you use externally for a net promoter score, but you can get one question on, would you recommend this company to other people to work at? And you get a scoring back, and you can start to trend this stuff. You can look at your turnover ratios. Sometimes when I'm really developing someone who's having a very hard time seeing their blind spots and growing emotionally intelligent, I take it a much larger step. Let's go ahead and break it all the way down in an Excel sheet and list out, they might be subjective, but we're going to get objective views. I want a self-rating from the individual. I'm going to give them my professional judged rating. And then we'll get like 10 different people ratings on a scale of like 1 to 5. And then you color code that, you know, some stoplight color, green, yellow, red. And we can measure that over time and improvement from people feedback, because at the heart of leading, really, if you boil it all down, it's the ability to influence others. Well, how do you, yes, it's going to show in your measured output, your net and your product and your turnover. You're also going to have people feedback, right? So there's ways to measure it, and there's an approach to do it. And the trick for the leader in those moments, how do we put our ego to the side, is remember your North Star goals. What's your goals? Does it hurt at times? Yeah, it does. And it's good when I'm working out in the gym to stay fit and, you know, try to stay somewhat healthy these days. I get sore with a good workout. And I know there's a blessing that comes out of that, meaning I'm trimming some fat. I'm working on the muscles and tendons so they're healthier longer. It's true with my leadership approach. I'm going to get a little sore when I really work out the feedback and the self-assessment, but I'm going to trim some things I don't need and put on the things that I should.
Excellent, excellent. Wow. You gave me a complete 360 degree to all our listeners and viewers to see how they can work out. With your leadership and experience, we can spend hours together, but as we are reaching the top of the hour, I want to have a final question for you. Share your wisdom to the current business owners who really want to thrive. What is your advice? And also share your point of contact. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, how can they get connected with you?
Thank you. Fidelis Leadership and Business. Website is Fidelis, Fidelis LBC for Leadership and Business Company.com. That's where you'll find the contact, everything about the approach. And I would love to take on some more Q&A and opportunities, and we'll have lots of teachings and videos coming up and fun stuff. In fact, I'm inviting Swami back to talk with me, and it would be grand. So I think some final thoughts. When we're leaning into it, let's go back to the North Star stuff. So when I think about what I find in these elements is the leaders might be thinking, I work twice as hard for half the profit. I don't know what my profit's going to be in 1 year, let alone 3. Accountability is a problem for us. We leak profit because of it. Subordinate leaders don't solve problems. What are we really wanting out of our company? I will tell those leaders that they are capable. There is not a leader I haven't gone to. If they're willing to engage in emotional intelligence, they're willing to learn, and they have the drive, they can do it. I've done this with people with doctorates through no high school education, people that were incarcerated for 12 years who were out, who were turning their life around, to long tenured, elderly, mostly successful in their life, who were challenged with how to really lead better and give their company to the next generation. It's about muscle memory. It's about putting that ego aside. When I love to coach fitness, just as an aside, it's a fun thing to do. I never go out of the gym to find someone to coach. They walk in the gym, they come to me and they say, I have these goals. I know I can't do it and I need you. So where does it start? It starts with that leader having enough self-awareness to go, okay, I'm going to put my ego aside. I'm good. I know my product and service. I've been successful to this point, but I can be much more successful. I do want that work-life balance. I want a positive culture. I want effective and empowering accountability. I want efficient processes. I want high-functioning teams. I want full profit design, and I want superior leadership. Fidelis Leadership and Business delivers that, but how do you get that? You got to walk in the gym. You got to go to people who really know what they're doing, and you got to be willing to get underneath the barbell and learn some new techniques. I had worked out my entire life. This is what we'll end on. Grew up in a gym. We had the only gym in a small town in the service, working out consistently, got certified to do it in a couple different ways, did it after the service, after retiring, thought I knew a lot. And all of a sudden I realized how bad I was. I had a really good coach look at me and goes, man, your technique's off. Like, your hips should be this way, your knees should be that way. I'm like, come on, I'm an expert, right? And the more I was paying attention and put my ego aside, I realized I had some more to learn. So I went to real certified USA weightlifting based type of training, and my technique was so bad. They took all the weight off the bar. It still wasn't good enough. They put a PVC pipe in my hand, and I had to relearn my techniques for 3 months. Now, did that change my strength ability, my passion, my prior wisdom? No, it didn't. I had to relearn some muscle memory techniques. And once I gained that, then I was off to the races. And I think leadership for business owners or principal leaders or senior executive teams is the same way. We grew up under what we thought we knew, and we've never had the opportunity to learn 2 things. We haven't learned full executive end-to-end proven business leadership approaches, and have muscle memory. And then the second thing is full business financial acumen. And I think that's the real trick. Put your ego aside, go seek it out, and you'll be shocked at what you learn, and you'll really get to those North Star goals that you want. And that's what Fidelis delivers.
Wow, fantastic. So these are the golden nuggets. Walk into the gym, keep aside the ego, be open-minded, work through it, and get the rhythm with the clear goals and the positive attitude. So nice to have you, Sean. You really give a gold nugget. So thank you so much for giving that wisdom. And we continue to have this conversation offline and online. But thanks again for your time and precious nuggets, sharing this to all the upcoming leaders or the leaders who are already want to become a empathetic